back to our podcast, 4Randoms. My name is Elliot Way, and I will be the moderator for this podcast, and I am here at the Solano College TV studio, once again joined by Jacob Pringle, Maya Winston, and Carlos Carvajal. In our podcast today, we'll be focusing on shrinkflation, and throughout the podcast, we'll start off by talking about why shrinkflation is a problem, what causes it, and some possible solutions that we can do to at least mitigate the effects of shrinkflation on consumers. So, with all of that out of the way, before we even begin getting into any details about why shrinkflation is a problem, we need to understand what it is first. So, what exactly is shrinkflation?
So, shrinkflation occurs when companies reduce the size of a product but keep the price relatively the same, if not maybe a little bit more expensive.
Well, now that we kind of have an idea of what shrinkflation is, have any of you noticed it in the things that you buy? And if so, what are some examples that stood out to you?
Well, an egregious example to me is with Pringles, which is ironic because my last name is Pringles, is that you could see by product B that that the chips have gotten smaller and even the tubes have gotten smaller. So it's not like you're getting like more chips. They're shrinking the price, but you're getting more chips. They're even shrinking the amount of what you're getting as well.
Yeah, so following it up, I mean that's just Pringles, but let's just take a look like at the bigger picture, right? With like fast food chains and all of that. So according to this article, it's two fast food items and chains that shrinking portions in 2025, according to the customers. So I have Chick-fil-A and McDonald's, starting out with Chick-fil-A. So the sandwich portion, mainly the filet, has been shrinking over time, and it says like over the span of 5 years, every single year has been shrinking less and like more and more. And of course, like we don't really see it because it's a long span, right? But if you think about it, you're still paying the same amount of price for a smaller sandwich. Now moving on to McDonald's, with my resource here with Yelp. So customers do say that the nuggets have actually changed over time as well. It is still the same like amount and count everything, but it's just the nugget that is a little smaller. Even people say that it looks weirder in a way. So yeah, these are definitely some examples that shrinkflation has really put out there.
And then looking even outside of like food areas, even household items like toilet paper, laundry detergent, paper towels, all those things are shrinking too. It like even the government did a report on it actually in December of 2024. The US government accountability offices report that consumer prices with product downsizing, that they said that shrinkflation they affects mostly items like this in the household that you use every day, or things like snacks like the Pringles or fast food. It's so egregious that it's happening at this rate.
How is that affecting like household items? Paper towels, toilet paper,
Yeah.
necessities.
Sorry, got off track there. But yeah, it's happening in household items specifically too, because like you're getting less amount of paper towels per like roll, or you're getting like the laundry detergent, a lot of them like aren't filling it all the way up anymore. It'll be like 3/4 or it'll be 2/3, and just because the packaging isn't clear, you won't be able to tell that there's less product in it, even though the price is like the same, if not more, honestly, for most of it.
And sometimes what you see, the packaging, sometimes it can be a box, cylinder, anything. Sometimes it's not always filled up to match the volume that's displayed on the outside too. Well, moving on a little bit, a 2024 survey published by Lending Tree by Maggie Davis showed that 71% of Americans reported experiencing at least one instance of shrinkflation in the past year. Even with that in mind, people don't always recognize shrinkflation while they're shopping. Why do you think it's so easy for others, or sometimes even yourselves, to overlook the signs of shrinkflation?
Well, the changes usually when a company does shrinkflation is really over time. They're usually gradually making it smaller and smaller to a point where like it becomes like 5 years, and then that's when people start noticing. It's kind of like a tipping point of when people as a collective are like, do you realize what's happening to the Pringle skin? Like which saw, and then it becomes like a conversation.
Yeah, even with what Carlos mentioned earlier with like McDonald's, like yeah, today a lot of people will get like their cheeseburger or whatever you get from McDonald's, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, this is like ridiculously small. Has it always been this small? But I'm sure like when they first started doing it, maybe a year or two in, nobody said anything or even noticed it, honestly.
Yeah, that's why I'm buying 40 nuggets instead of 20 now.
No, I feel like kind of like psychology has a role in you because you think about it. Of course, it happens in the time span of like years, right? It's not like small months or anything because companies know that they will notice it, right? So they just do it like that. Say, okay, let me be smart, do it in a span of a couple of years so people don't notice it, and then still keep the same price.
Yeah, and even with the packaging, like Elliot and I were saying earlier, the packaging will stay the same and it'll not be clear. It'll be like fun colors that grabs your attention,
Right.
but you won't be able to see what's in it. So if it's something you grab every day or every time you go to the grocery store, you're going to notice the packaging and you're going to be like, oh yeah, this is what I get. And you're going to put it in your grocery cart and you're not going to think anything else of it, even though maybe it felt a little lighter and you just didn't notice.
Well, why do you guys think that shrinkflation continues to be a growing concern or problem for consumers today, even as more people are becoming aware of it?
Well, that plays into a lot of lower income households. It's just something that they can't avoid. They're already budgeting so many different things into their life, like their bills and their household items that they're getting at the grocery stores or wherever they get it. And it's just, they're already stretching it so far to their ability and they can't budget to get more of it more often. And it's just not something they can avoid, really.
Yeah, and to add on to what Maya was saying, a lot of like the food assist programs also are kind of not as helpful as they once were to people who are in need of it because they can't stretch the amount. They can't stretch it as far as they could before. They're gonna have to keep on refilling their food, their resources more often now.
And even if they could, like if they have the money for it or whatever, a lot of the time, or not a lot of the time, some of the time there are certain products where it's just only one or two companies are selling it. They have a monopoly or something similar to it, and there's just no other option but that company to buy from.
Well, now that we've talked about what shrinkflation is and why it's a problem, let's take a closer look at what causes it in the first place. So to start off, what are some of the factors that lead companies to use shrinkflation?
Well, to talk about that, first we need to differentiate between inflation and shrinkflation because they're not the same thing. Shrinkflation is one of the ways companies deal with inflation, but it's not the same. Inflation is when things like labor or packaging or just even acquiring the resource that they're trying to attain, that price goes up, so companies have to pay more in order to get that.
Supply and demand.
Exactly. There's going to be less of it, or there's going to be less people trying to get it, so the cost, it's more dangerous, I should say, or it's just harder to attain it, so companies end up having to pay more. And one of the ways they deal with having to pay more is using shrinkflation, which is when there's less product.
Another reason they use shrinkflation is to maintain their profit margins. So according to also the U.S. Government Accountability Office in August 2025, an article they wrote said that companies use shrinkflation to respond to their rising costs while maintaining their profit margins. So as the costs go up, or production costs, companies still want to make sure they're making the same amount of profit on each product that they're selling. So that leads to another question on whether or not, if companies are dealing with higher costs and trying to maintain their profit margins, why do they choose or think that they can reduce the size of a product instead of simply raising the prices?
So with companies, right, according to this article, Shrinkflation and Consumer Demand by Jensen in 2024, people don't really notice the price of stuff. They notice the price of stuff, but they don't notice the quantity of what's inside, right? So with the food, with the household stuff, these companies just try to decrease products, but still keep the same price. So again, so people don't notice it, and why they do it is because sometimes products are not bought enough. So that's when like companies start losing money. Oh, this need more income. Okay, let me just think of something different. Let me just take some product out in same package, so people think like, oh, okay, I'm just buying the same thing, you know. But in reality, it's like smaller portions, but still have like the same amount of price. So it's still the same income, but just like using less product. So in reality, companies are not wasting that much on filling up some stuff, you know.
Why do they avoid increasing the prices?
Well, again, it's just one of the first things people notice. They're much more likely to notice that their favorite soup or whatever you want to use as an example. They're much more likely to notice that it went up a couple dollars than notice that it went down a couple ounces.
Yeah, and to add on to that, a lot of these companies like to stay at these attractive price points, like $4.99, so they can capitalize off of deals and stuff like two chip bags for $4.99, and make these prices seem attractive because all I gotta do is submit like $5 and I get two family-sized chip bags. That's
Yeah.
the deal for me.
Another factor that can influence the decision to utilize shrinkflation is competition. How do you guys think competition between companies play a role in shrinkflation?
Well, competition can influence shrinkflation because of how heavily discouraged inflation is onto the market. Because people are gonna, like Carlos and Maya have said, people are gonna notice the price before they notice a shrinkage in the product, and what that will do is lead consumers to other competitive products. So a lot of companies will rather partake in shrinkflation to maintain that competitive price point. And also kind of like example in my modern example I have with this with my source of industrial and corporate change, Melmise Jordan, in April of 2025, she examines the agricultural market of companies in the U.S. compared to overseas, and how a lot of the U.S. companies are having to partake in shrinkflation so they can keep up with foreign markets and such. And also, competition also influences like follow the leader approach to follow the leader in pricing as well for the amount, kind of, because if one company has 3 chips in their bag and another company has 10, they're gonna be like, oh, we can follow the same steps that the other company with the less amount has.
Yeah, they're just gonna be like, oh my gosh, wait, we can do that? Let me do it too.
Competition also has a role in brand preferences. So if one company is increasing their prices, other people are going to look at other companies or brands and see what their prices are and see which one is a better deal. Why do you guys think that is?
Sorry, say that again. Why?
Why do you think that people look for better deals from brands when one company that they prefer starts increasing their prices?
Well, again, it's just they think it's less expensive. Even if it's like company A, they raise their prices just a little bit and they're like, oh, but it's just how we have to do it because of inflation and all these other reasons that they give. But company B, and they're like, they'd have less product for less, or they have less product for a lower price. More people are going to come to that one more. And even if it's about trust too. It plays a role when people feel like they're being snuck around their backs or stuff, especially with things like shrinkflation. They're just much more likely to go to another company, be like, I don't really like Oreos anymore. I don't really like crunchy something, and just because it feels like they were lying to me about it. It feels like they were betraying my trust in their company as a brand.
And like what Maya said before, I'm so sorry. Let's just think about these low-income families, right? They of course want to try to find better prices because prices are rising overall. They want to try to find cheaper stuff. So just following that, people are always going to find the better deals.
Okay, well, now that we've talked about why shrinkflation happens, let's start discussing some of the possible solutions that we can do to at least reduce the effects of shrinkflation. So what are some of the things that we or other people can do to better manage shrinkflation?
Well, just being aware of it, first of all. Like, I know we're all aware of what shrinkflation is at this point, or have a vague idea of what it means. But in today's society, especially in our economic state, we as consumers and customers and everything else need to be more aware of what we're buying and how much we're actually getting for that price.
Yeah, and I say like also check like the unit price. Like to see how much per ounce or per item, not just look overall like the total price, because that's literally where shrinkflation heads.
Yeah, we're seeing that across like multiple markets where people are trying to use unit prices to kind of make sure that they're getting the right deal. We're seeing it even in the housing market where people are comparing square footage per dollar, so they're not even like getting skimped out on their the amount of money they're putting into the product.
It's just a much more accurate way of pricing things, I should say, if you're looking for the best deal. But so many companies just don't want to show you that, because then you'll realize that maybe this isn't the best one to be buying.
Right.
And that leads us to our second solution. What do you guys think about companies being more transparent with the consumers?
Well, companies can be more transparent to the consumers to build trust with the with the with the consumer. And kind of the source I have for this is by Informs from Ionis in March of 2024. And people are twice as more likely to buy from a company if they're more transparent. They're more transparent of the causes why shrinkflation is happening, and like why they're getting less for their dollar, and this can like and how like the individual can use this to their advantages by looking up trusted companies, looking up sources of stuff that is like, oh, this company is actually transparent in how they are approaching their shrinkflation, how they're approaching their marginal costs and such.
And just transparency is just so important as a company, because yeah, they list like how many ounces or grams or liters or whatever it is on the bottom of the packaging, but again, it's on the bottom in fine print or in like all black, and it's not something that we pay attention to as consumers and as customers, as people really, and the companies know that and they keep it that way on purpose, I feel like.
Okay. That leads us to our third solution. What are some policies that could at least improve the transparency of companies? Policies can at least encourage to provide clear information or requiring clear labeling when product cycles are changing. What else do you guys have to say about that?
Yeah, I just feel like, again, with the packaging, it's just such a big contribution to why it's such an issue, because it's like a misdirection, honestly. So many people just don't pay attention to it because the packaging looks the same. It looks the same size, it looks the same shape. There's no visible change in the art on it or whatever. And it's just, if they were more transparent with the size of the actual product, like if they shrunk the packaging on it, or even just made it so part of it was clear so you could see what's actually inside of what you're buying, would work a lot better.
Policies just allow like you to have like a backbone to rely on, something that feels foundational, that is like, okay, there isn't gonna be a point where I feel like I'm getting literally nothing for my dollar, where it feels like you're just getting completely ripped off.
Yeah, I mean, like overall, it should, for like the labeling part, right? These labels sometimes are so small. Like, let's be honest, do people even notice it? And overall, I feel like people normalize it. It's like, okay, price, boom, let me just put it in my cart, but we don't look at the labels, and that's basically like where everything hides, so it's a big thing.
It's
Wow.
just, yeah, it's just like everything we talked about. It's just so important. I feel like there'd just be such a bigger impact on, or a lesser impact on shrinkflations on our products and everything that we're buying if we had better policies implemented within our society.
Well, that brings us to the end of our podcast about shrinkflation. Up to this point, we've talked about what shrinkflation is, why is it a problem, how it happens, and some solutions that we can utilize to at least reduce the effects of it for consumers. My name is Elliot Way, the moderator for this podcast, and I was joined by Jacob Pringle, Maya Winston, and Carlos Carvalho. We hope that this podcast helped you to at least learn something new about shrinkflation. Thank you for watching.